fortune, looking hella gorgeous. Switch your dinner plans, pull up to the fortress. An assortment, cooking 7 courses. Young gentlemen, see the perfect
Cause
courtship.
it was 7 o'clock, I'll be right on time and hitting the spot. You know you look so fine and giving you up, I can't survive. Shooting my shot tonight. Cause it was 7 o'clock, I'll be right on time and hitting the spot. You know you look so fine and giving you up, I can't survive. Shooting my shot tonight.
Ain't too many words I could explain this feeling. And bed with you's the best, it's next to making millions. Adding legs up in the air until you break the ceiling. Bust the wide open for me, baby, like you can't conceal it. Reach the climax, crushing it like a spike can. Sliding deep inside that and touching it like an iPad. I got to drive you crazy and we might crash. Candlelit, sweet lipstick up on your wine glass. We could take it slow like the speed limit.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the Q&A session for the movie Between Tides, one of our great documentaries at this year's PAF. My name is Eric Hong. I'm a programmer and a grant writer for the Philadelphia Asian American Film Festival. And we have 5 guests. We have the director, we have 2 cast members, and then we have 2 people who were not in the movie. So I will let them introduce themselves first. Masa, do you want to begin?
Sure. My name is Masa Fox, and I'm the director. Yeah.
Okay. Charlie?
Yeah, Charlie Fox. I'm a producer. I'm a scholar in Japan and Masa's father.
And Irene?
Oh, I'm Irene. I'm one of the cast and live in Longmont and the mother of those 2 boys.
Kevin?
I'm upstairs. Mom is downstairs.
Computer, apparently.
COVID safe.
Kent?
Yeah, hi. I am Irene's son. I'm beaming in from Chicago.
Great. Thank you so much for joining us. For those who are watching this stream, please post your questions and comments. It doesn't matter which platform you're using. If you post a comment on Facebook or YouTube or Twitch, we will get it. We'll get it immediately where we are. So let me start with a question for Masa. And I know you've been working on this film for 8.5 years or so, since your first visit to Chichijima. So what took 8.5 years?
Sure. Good question. I started. My dad and I started shooting in March of 2010, and the film was first released in late 2018. So yeah, it took about 8.5 years, and the actual principal photography took only 3 years. We ended it in 2013. We had all this material, I think close to 100 hours of film, but when I finished that, I was still in actually graduate school. I was actually in Los Angeles, attending film school. So I was very busy with that. So I couldn't really devote my entire time to finishing the film. Somewhere after I graduated in 2015, I started working more seriously on it, and then realized that there was a lot more that we needed to do. And in particular, it was the added archival photographs and film footage that we incorporated into the film. And so to go and do the research and acquire the necessary footage took a while. And then once we got that incorporated, to clear the rights for all those footage took a considerable amount of time and money. So that really caused us to wait and for contractual things, as well as my working on editing the new footage, and so that all total took 8.5 years. And even I think that year that we released it, we were still clearing rights. to the footage. So yeah, it took a while.
Right. And what took so long to clear the rights? Is it just the usual process, or is there something special?
So we went through several sources. So there was one in the National Archives in Washington, D.C., in the States, and then we went through 3 sources in Japan. And the National Archives in D.C. didn't take. In fact, I think that was all cleared back in 2013. But when we started investigating footage for the like the newsreels, the newspaper articles, everything, we kind of ran into sort of roadblocks because these national broadcasters control the rights in Japan, whereas it's mainly public domain in the United States, at least the footage that we were trying to find. So it was closely guarded by this, semi-governmental, semi-private entities in Japan, who basically had these like very strict procedures. You had to pay money to be able to see it. You had to, you could only see them at certain points, and then once you got the footage, you were only allowed to extract, certain portions of it, et cetera. So they had all these hurdles that we need to sort of clear. And it was a very frustrating process, but I think we were very persistent. Also, I was lucky because as a private citizen, which is how I approached it, I wouldn't have been able to get access to the sources in Japan. I had to use my connections with my dad, namely his university, and go as an academic institution rather than a private citizen to be able to get access. So once we did that, we were able to get access to everything that we wanted.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. So you said, my hope is that the film is more than just the preservation of these people's little-known experiences that may otherwise die with them. I want this to continue the running discourse on identity, on our expanding notions of nationhood, and on marginalized communities whose lives are at the mercy of distant but powerful policymakers. Is that your general approach to film, or is that something that developed as you worked on this film?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry, I missed the question that you had cut out there.
Oh, is this sort of your general approach to film, or is this specific to this project?
The preservation aspect of it.
You talked about the running discourse on identity.
Oh, identity. Yes. No, great question. No, that's a great question. I think my general approach has been to use my background as sort of a motivator to investigate stories that are like mine, maybe very different in certain respects. But I do know that I started off in college making video projects about myself and my own backgrounds. But as I sort of got older, I realized that there were people with similar backgrounds with entirely different stories. And so that's been my approach, is to sort of expand on that discourse of identity, especially in mixed race communities. And so the Bonin Islanders just were a natural fit, and that's the reason why I really pursued this project.
Mm-hmm. So when you first arrived on the islands, did you have this film in mind, or?
So the backstory is, Dad, do you want to?
Sure.
Yeah.
It actually started as a research project of mine that had nothing to do with the Bonin Islanders themselves. The Japanese poet that I did my dissertation on, spent 3 or 4 months on the island back in the 1910s. And he had intended to move there permanently, but it didn't work out. He left and came back. So not that much of his history was tied up in the island, but he did produce some significant poems while he was there. So I thought I should go and see it. And in 2009, I did. And I happened quite by chance to be on a ship down there with about half of the Japanese research community focused on the islands, and they clued me in first to the presence of these islanders, and then I tagged along with him while we were down there and met a number of the people that we ended up interviewing, and got fascinated in the history. Indeed, the poet that I was working on, it was a loss as far as all that goes. But the great thing to come out of it was, that here was this story that was just so compelling, so very interesting, and yet nobody in Japan, none of my students, if I asked them, about the Bonin Islands, number one, they don't know it by Bonin, they don't know it by that name, they know it by Ogasawara. But they also had no idea that the original settlers were non-Japanese. Nobody had any idea. I mean, same thing in America. You talk to anybody you know, and you ask them about the Bonin Islands. Did you know that the Bonin Islands were once an American possession and all that? And everybody goes, what? The Bonin? What? Did Jack London mention that somewhere? Yeah, he did. He was there in the 1890s. It was just a very interesting thing that I thought both sides should be more aware of. So at that point, I enlisted Masa, I begged him, please, to come. Here was this really, really compelling story that had a lot to do, I thought, had a lot of similarities with his own history as, a bicultural, biracial person here. He grew up in Japan, was eventually educated in the States, but it all started here.
Mm-hmm. Great. So, Masa, when you first heard this story, what was your reaction?
I was blown away. Honestly, I didn't know anything like this existed. I'm now privileged to know Irene's whole family, but even meeting them when this is after the fact, even meeting them has been a mind-blowing experience, to say the least, because when you grow up so unique in Japan, and my story, for those viewers out there who don't know my backstory, is that I was born and raised in Japan as a mixed race person, and I felt very alienated growing up, being in a largely seemingly monocultural country, and so to discover this whole community and this whole history, and not just the history, not just this like history since 1830, but Kevin and Kent, these people who were basically my age and who had these unique identities. I think that was just an incredible experience for me. I was talking about expanding on the discourse. Well, that experience of getting to know them has been a very transformative one. So. And it was just natural for me to want to get to know and do this, know the history and the people, and do this project.
Mm-hmm. Great. And Charlie, have you written about this?
Well, I've written some academic articles on the literary connections. A lot of painters and writers made their way to the Bonin Islands in the 1890s, from the 1890s to the 1920s and 30s. And so I've written on that, but just, short academic articles. It was fairly early on obvious that a documentary on the descendants of the original settlers would be a much more compelling way of dealing with this. So I haven't written all that much on it. I've poured my energy into getting this documentary done.
Mm-hmm. Great. So, Irene, what was your first reaction when you heard about this film?
Well, I think I was kind of excited because I like Masa said, nobody knew. When I came, no matter where I went, people never knew where I was from. Even when I went to Japan, it was very confusing about the identity. So when I met Masa, I was very encouraged because we are a endangered species. Every time one of us islanders pass away, we say, well, there goes another one. And the Navy generation, the era that I grew up in, was so isolated. There's nothing written about it, no documents or anything. So I guess I was thinking in terms of our sons and down the road that it would be nice to know that it's in a film.
Mm-hmm. Great. And how did you and Masa meet up?
Where did we meet up, Masa?
It was first through Danny Long, our other producer. He arranged for me to visit Las Vegas. There's an biannual reunion of sorts that happens among Islanders located in the U.S. And so I was fortunate enough to be a part of that. This is back in 2011. And so that was when I was first introduced, although we were introduced online through email before that.
Mm-hmm. And Irene, do you go back frequently, rarely, never?
The last time I went back was 2008, just about now, when Obama got the presidency and celebrated with all the Islanders. It's a long trip, and now my parents have died who were there, so the connection thins. But I do, if I could, I would love to go back again. It's just a long, arduous journey.
Yeah.
So how do you get there?
Anybody want to explain that?
Well,
it's a 24-hour voyage from Tokyo Harbor, straight down over the high seas, 1,000 kilometers south.
yeah.
And yet it's still a part of Tokyo. So it's a local call from the islands to the Shibuya area of Tokyo.
And it's just once a week, so you have to know you have an entire week.
That's
Right.
Wait for the boat to go back another.
You better want to be there because you're gonna be
Right.
there.
And you don't want to be. You have to plan your airline so that you get there at least one day before. Because if you miss that ship, you're stuck in Tokyo.
Right. So for your viewers, basically the ship only leaves like once every 6 days or whatever. But most of us, like including myself, when we were filming, we were coming from Kyoto, which is a 2.5 hour bullet train ride. So I'd have to time it so that I actually get in, there in time for the boat to catch the boat. For the people coming from the U.S., obviously that's even much more of a pain because you have to figure in your flights, your hotel stays. In fact, you have to. Irene, is it correct that you'd have to fly in the day before?
Yes.
Yeah. And to be able to plan that. So it's a massive trip. And then on top of that, you get to the island and you have to stay at least 3 days. Is it 3 days or 4 days? I forget.
3 days.
3 days.
Unless there's a typhoon and then you have to leave right away.
Exactly.
Or you're stuck there for a
I
night.
should also point out, if anyone's thinking this is a luxury cruise, you're spending more money. You're sleeping on a mat in effectively a carpeted gymnasium type room inside the boat.
Right.
But you pay a lot of extra money to have a private room. So not only is it long, it's also not glamorous.
Mm-hmm. Have you and Kevin and Ken, have you guys been a few times?
Once.
Just once?
It's when we were kids.
1984.
And then I made it there in 2000 with my, when I was basically on an extended honeymoon with my Japanese wife. And we cut short a planned trip to Thailand when it worked out that we were going to be able to go to the island.
Wait, how long? I forgot that. How long were you there on that visit?
Because of the boat, we had a week. I don't think we did 2 weeks, so we had a full week.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And got to spend time with the folks who raised Mom.
Yeah.
And the first time I could speak the language there.
Yeah, that's
true. When Ken and I were there as kids, we only spoke English, and so we could relate to a lot of the questions there. And so I studied Japanese in college, so it was really neat to be on the island and do the flip back and forth of English and Japanese and speak with our relatives for the first time properly.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And Eric, for those of when I had to travel to Guam to go to school, we had to get on a seaplane. Do you know what a sea?
Yep.
And didn't have enough fuel, so I had to land on Iwo Jima and then go that way. So the ship was kind of nice.
Right.
So Guam is a good 1,000 miles, right? South.
Yeah. So if you think about it, like, in the movie it comes up that they went to high school. Well, mainland Japan is 1,000 kilometers north of Chichijima, which is 650 miles. And then basically Chichijima sits halfway in between Guam and mainland Japan. At least that's what I was told by the Islanders. So if I'm incorrect, I'm sorry. But so yeah, you guys were so used to traveling and those miles, especially on like these primitive. I don't know if primitive is the right word, but like the seaplanes that you
Essentially
took.
World War II era seaplanes.
Right.
Yeah, it was.
Was that the first time you left the island, Mom, to go to school?
Yes.
You didn't travel besides?
Oh, no, you couldn't go anywhere
Yeah.
unless you were going to go get a wife. The Navy did not let you go just for a trip. No.
Yeah.
We didn't have passports.
Of course. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Kevin and Kent, what did you know about the Bonin Islands when you were growing up?
Well, we could probably talk for a long time about our sort of family lineage and what we were told, and then how it was revised. Because
there's a second movie in there somewhere. If there's out there, yeah.
But when we went there in 1984, I was 8 years old, and I knew that I had grandparents. I knew that it was very expensive for my mom to talk to them. And Mom, you would get these cassette tapes once in a while.
Yeah.
When people talk about the quarantine and how I think people get fatigued with Zoom and calls like this, but at the same time, it's kind of amazing because I remember one primary way you would communicate with your mother was through cassette tapes. She would just talk for like an hour or something, right? And you would listen, and I wouldn't know what she was saying, but you would translate some of it. And then you would send the tape back where you would talk for an hour and catch her up on things. So I knew that I had grandparents in this faraway place. We were in super dry Colorado. And then one year we went. And I suppose my main memories of learning about it were from actually going there. Probably my earliest really vivid, detailed memories are from being there. Kevin, it's probably different for you because you were older. What do you remember?
It was a confirmation of maybe what, for me at that age, growing and learning about Japanese culture, which Mom was always good about telling us. We never had quite a clear answer of then why are we so Caucasian looking, but we thought we were half Japanese. And so with the combination of going to Japan itself and learning Japan, and then suddenly we're in the island, and then we had cousins or second cousins or whatever the mix is, and they were all glomming around us, but we couldn't speak with them. We just played with them, and you had your birthday, and they all loved that. And
yeah, I can show photos if
absolutely
it makes sense. Should we go ahead and do?
Yeah, go ahead.
Let's look at the photos.
Okay, because this is the backdrop of what we're talking about.
As he's pulling that up, I'll throw in a little thing because it had in the film Stanley, I believe it was Stanley there, and he was feeling trapped on the island. He wanted to leave, but he felt obligated to his grandmother. The whole idea of lineage and you're responsible. Right. In college, I had thought, oh, I'm the oldest son and my mom is the oldest child. Does that mean I'm responsible to carry on the household in the island for our Japanese grandpa there? I thought I'm going to have to move from Colorado and live in Chichijima to do my duty.
Those are some of our cousins.
And
I turned 8 actually on this trip, and so they threw a huge party for me, and I couldn't really talk to them, but we were kids. We could just play. Kevin, you were very jealous because I got so many presents.
You got so many presents from the Japanese.
Look at that. Yeah.
That's the bunker.
The bunker.
Yeah.
So your cousins still live on the island?
Yeah. Some of them do.
Yeah.
And I think our dad took most of these photos. So these are from slides that I had scanned a couple of years ago. That's the trip to the cemetery.
You have to always go to the cemetery. Yeah.
And then that's Ogasawara Maru. Is that still the ship?
No.
It's the same name, but I believe it's the new model.
That anchor looks very rusty there.
Actually, you know what? That's 2 models ago. I'm sorry.
Oh, wow. Okay. This is, we're old.
And that one is
totally gone now, right?
Yeah.
That's from the war. Yeah.
Yeah.
So look like you have 2 questions.
There's our
Oh, yeah.
grandfather who, yeah, I think I just thought, okay, that's my grandpa. I don't remember thinking, why am I so Caucasian? Oops, I'll stop sharing now.
Okay.
Thank you so much for sharing those. That was
Oh,
wonderful.
of course, yeah.
So has the island has the movie been shown in on the island yet?
It has not. This is a kind of a sensitive subject, but it hasn't, and there's various reasons why. Mainly because I wanted to use discretion before having a mass screening of sorts. When this film has been bringing up a lot of old memories that people don't necessarily want to share, and so I'm very sensitive to that, and so I've left the opportunity to online screening, and we're actually about to give access to people there. But no, it hasn't. That's the short answer. And you know, I don't. It's not ideal. I obviously would like for the whole community to get together to share in the memories. But I figured that this was the best way forward for the movie to be seen.
Have you heard from people who have seen it online?
So the only people that have seen it are Irene, obviously, and her family, and George Yokota, the teacher. His wife came to the screening in Seattle, and so there are people in the Seattle community there, because there are a fair number of Bonin Islanders who settled there who've seen it. There's a fair number who were living in San Diego when we showed it there who saw it. But from the island, I don't think anybody has seen it except, no, I don't think anybody has. So no, I can't share with you any of the reactions. But that is going to change hopefully in the next couple of months, because we'll be giving access to people there.
Okay.
Masa, I'm interested in this question that came from Festival Volunteers about
Sure.
if you know of any local-led historic preservation efforts.
I honestly would be the wrong person to ask that, but I can basically say that there have been, but it's been very as far as I know, it's been very there's scholars from Tokyo who come and do the work, but in terms of the local led effort, it's been very small. I do know that for instance, Islanders kids are very much interested in this, but they don't show the same kind of interest, enthusiasm as the Islander kids typically in the States, and I don't know why that is. But I think also there's a lot of kind of like bygones kind of attitude on the island. So that's the only thing I could say. Those are generalizations, but I don't specifically know. Just so you know, the other question is that, well, what is the awareness on the island? Do school children, do they get taught the history? As far as I know, I'm not a teacher there, but as far as I know, it's not taught. And that's really the unfortunate part, is that it's such a huge part of the history of the island, but it's
so
not.
They're basically taught that the island is Japan, and they don't get taught much about this.
I think they are taught about the 23 years that the U.S. Navy occupied there. Well, at least through like stories. They're not formally educated in school, but they obviously have to sort of have a general idea of it. But nobody knows about all the really hardships that Irene and everybody else had to go through. I was so shocked. Like I knew. By my end of my first day, I knew more about the Islanders' history than a lot of the Islanders' sons and daughters.
But again, it's a question of percentages. The Islanders, the descendants of the original Islanders, are a small percentage of the population on the island, and the ones who came from Japan, especially in the post-war era, are not all that interested. So it's one of those kinds of propositions.
Mm-hmm. Right. So the last question also, has the film been shown in Japan, and do you have thoughts of doing it if it hasn't been shown yet?
So it premiered in Yamagata at the Yamagata International Documentary Film Festival last year in 2019. That was our Japan premiere, and it was premiered as a part of a program called Amnesia, which really investigated Forgotten Stories in the Pacific. It was just this really perfect program. And I'm very thankful for the organizers. That was the first screening. The second screening technically was online and virtual. It was at the Tokyo Liftoff Film Festival this year. But we are working on more screenings there. We do have a subtitled version, so that obviously is very helpful.
But the lockdown has shut down everything. But we're trying to arrange through my university, Ritsumeikan, and its sister university in Kyushu. We're trying to arrange screenings on campus. But right now, everything is online here too.
Right.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for joining us. We're out of time, but I'm really, really happy to announce that Between Tides has won the PATH Jury Award for Best Documentary. So,
Oh my God!
Yatta!
Best news of the day. Oh, no, I'm kidding.
Great.
Really good
Oh my
news
God.
day. Really good news day. Slow news day, but
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, just so you know, I haven't really won an award for this. So.
all right. Congratulations, Masa.
Yeah, good job.
All right.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Eric. Thank you, Masa. Thank you, Charlie.
Thank you. Night.
Good night.
Nice. Good night. Good day.
Good seeing all of
You say this kill, black and brown, and when will you talk about class in this story? The rest is allegory. Come together, unionize, see it through each other's eyes. No need to fight over supplies while workers save lives. They need protection too. What we gonna do? Organize our way through. And for those behind bars, we must fight hard. Global pandemic, endemic, systemic. No equality, no quality of life.